and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Hi, this is Gay USA. I'm Ann Northrup.
And I'm Andy Hum, and I'm turning the clock on.
Okay. Well, we have a number of news stories this week, but we're going to start with a couple of guests. But let's tell you what's in the headlines that we'll get to shortly. We have new information on how we won those 4 marriage referenda in the election a couple of weeks ago.
Did some new messaging. Contributions to the National Organization for Marriage are sinking and mostly seem to have come from 1 or 2 donors.
2 big donations, but since there's no information about who gave it, we don't know whether it's 1 or 2 people or whatever. A Minnesota teenager has been denied the sacrament of confirmation by his local Catholic church as a punishment for opposing a gay-bashing marriage amendment.
An ex-gay Christian minister he was in the church, conducted mass rapes and then the murder of his wife. This is true.
It seems we're in the Christmas season with a lot of religious news. Howard Wallace, a pioneering gay labor activist, dies at 76 in San Francisco.
LGBT people continue to take over the world. A lesbian was elected Speaker of the Oregon House, and the first out gay elected official in Chile will take office.
French Catholics have been rounded up by their pastors and taken to the streets for a march against the proposed marriage law there.
We're taping on the Transgender Day of Remembrance, and World AIDS Day is December 1st.
We'll give you a few details about those. Andy will review the new Broadway production of Annie.
Yes, and
directed by James Lapine.
Yeah, the guy who works with Stephen Sondheim all the time.
Yep.
And if you can't wait till the end, it's a good production.
He's giving it away.
Ah, well.
Okay. But we're going to start with our guests.
Yes, and joining us are Kate. Our guests are from New Alternatives for LGBT Homeless Youth, and they are Kate Barnhart, who is the founder and director of New Alternatives.
On your right.
And she's a longtime member of ACT UP and has worked with at-risk youth for 18 years. And Destiny James, who is a member of New Alternatives, who struggled to get back into high school while being homeless. She is now a senior in high school and hopes to attend college in the fall. She's going to attend college in the fall. Welcome.
Yeah, right. Welcome. We thought, what could be more perfect for Thanksgiving than to have both of you on to tell us about what's going on for youth in the city and by implication elsewhere, and find out about the program you're running, Kate. So Kate, why don't you tell us first of all about New Alternatives and who you serve, who's out there, what's going on with them, and what you offer them.
Okay, well, New Alternatives works with LGBT homeless youth in the 16 to 24-year-old age range. New York City has about 4,000 homeless youth. There are varying estimates of what percentage of those youth are gay or lesbian.
Often 50% is what I hear.
It can be quite a large number.
And a significant proportion transgender.
Yes, very much so. And there are less than 300 beds for homeless youth in New York City. So clearly there's a huge disconnect between what's needed and what's available. And New Alternatives tries to fill in some of those gaps by providing drop-in services for LGBT homeless youth from our location on Christopher Street, which is historically an area where many homeless LGBT youth congregate.
Right, so you don't have a shelter, but this is a place where people can get meals and services and things like that. And where exactly is it?
We're located at 83 Christopher Street, right near 7th Avenue. So it's we're on the super highway to the pier on Christopher Street where all the young people hang out.
Okay.
So Destiny, tell us what was going on with you that led you to New Alternatives.
Well, When I first applied to New Alternatives, I was 18, turning 19, and I was still in high school, but kind of dropped out for a year, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with myself, kind of married at the moment of time, but that didn't work out for me. But basically what led me to New Alternatives was I knew I needed help, and I knew I needed services, and the place where I was working with before wasn't helping me, so I thought I would try a new program, and New Alternatives helped me in a lot of wonderful ways. They provided me with food, they provided me with clothing, they provided me with actually love and caring and conversations. It's not just a program that will help you with services, it's also a time in need where if you need someone to talk to, they'll gladly put you in a small place where they'll have a conversation with you.
And how did you become homeless?
I became homeless when I was 17. I actually got raped at the age of 17. Things that didn't work out for me at home would led me to leaving my house and trying to live with my aunt. That didn't work out. So my mother helped me get into another gay shelter. That wound up shutting down. So I was on the streets going from couple shelter to couple shelter and being pregnant. So knowing that I was pregnant and couple shelters and then wind up getting discharged, I had nowhere else to go but New Alternatives. And they wind up helping me get into AFC housing and then led me to where I'm at now, having my own apartment and in high school graduating.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
That must be very moving for you to have come from a situation that must have felt really despairing and down, and now you have real hope and optimism.
It's a wonderful feeling, actually, knowing that you start off from the bottom of the barrel to the top of the barrel where you can actually exit and you wouldn't have to worry about anything or not worrying about anything and nothing actually happened to you.
And what in particular at New Alternatives really made it a good program for you and made the difference?
What actually was wonderful for me was that they were open twice a week, and 1 week was just where they would actually you would actually communicate with other people, you get food, you get services, and Tuesday was a day where they actually helped you, where they'll find you somewhere to stay, the hardest. They'll find you if you wanted to go to school. They'll work with you on your schedule, trying to help you with school. And if you ever needed a job, they'll help you find a job or internship. They provide you with Metro cards.
Now, Kate, you've been working with, first of all, you've been an activist for a long time, but you've been working with homeless LGBT youth for a long time. What led you to this model? And describe how it works and how it fills in the gaps for people.
Sure, I think one of the things that's very different about New Alternatives is that we use a harm reduction model. And by that, what I mean is that just in the same way that you, for instance, would give a needle to someone who's injecting to help reduce the harm of that behavior.
A clean needle.
A clean needle, yes.
So they're not out sharing in...
Right. We don't force abstinence from any behavior on people who come to us. So, for instance, if young people come to us and they're involved in sex work or they're involved in drug or alcohol use, we don't say, okay, you have to stop that to be part of the program. We welcome young people the way they are, and then we work with them starting out. Basically, we base our assistance on their goals rather than coming to them with a preset agenda and saying, okay, we're going to fit you into this box now. Instead, we base our services on individuals' goals and tailor them to individuals' needs.
Well, Destiny said that what you offer is a loving, warm atmosphere that is supportive of people. And describe the range of things you encounter people needing.
Well, I think we find it's a huge range. I mean, we have folks who come in looking for, everything from canned food to assistance with, we have young people who are coming from other countries where it's not safe to be gay, and so they need help applying for asylum in the U.S., so we have to help them find immigration attorneys. We have a whole program where we assist homeless college students. We find donors to purchase textbooks and supplies. Like some of our students are studying art, and the art supplies can be expensive. So we have folks who do case management who help people get their identifying documents, Because when your parent kicks you out for being gay, they don't stop and say, okay, let me give you your birth certificate, your social security card, your transcripts, you know, your immunization records. Like, people come to us with pretty much nothing, and we have to start building all that stuff. And there are expenses related to that too. So we have a youth emergency fund where we pay for people's birth certificates, sometimes a driver's license if that's what they need to get a job. Various documents like that.
You'll be surprised at how long it takes. You'll be surprised actually how quick you actually get that, and how far it takes to get it, but how wonderful it feels at the end to actually have it.
Right, and Kate often holds the hands of a lot of people and takes you through the system. I know that you're also down in court when people need, you know, those kinds of services. You're down there advocating for them.
Yeah, we actually have a volunteer who's a criminal defense attorney who will go to court, and he's recently managed to convince a judge to sentence a young person to our program because we made the argument that jail is dangerous for transgender clients in particular, for anyone, but in this case a transgender client. And so the judge, you know, made a ruling that as long as we report to the court on this person's progress, that they can attend the program instead of going to jail.
And you do rely on volunteers. You're the only paid employee. So how can people volunteer for the program and learn more about it? Where can they look into it?
Sure. Well, the easiest way to volunteer is to sign up on our website, www.newalternativesnyc.org. We always need help preparing our Sunday evening meals. We serve about 50 young people a week, a hot, full meal. We need folks to help with tutoring, folks to help with resumes. We're always looking for people with professional skills. In particular, we're really looking for a bookkeeper. You know, we have a very limited budget, so we would rather not, we try not to spend it on stuff like bookkeepers. We try to spend it on clients and what they need. We're also looking for a psychiatrist who'd be willing to volunteer, because we do have a lot of young people with mental health issues.
And tell us about the other people in the program, Destiny.
Well, you have people from transgenders to lesbians to bisexuals to gay men that honestly there's different groups of people that come in for different various things. There's people that come in from being raped. There's people that come in from being gay bashed. There's people that come in from just not having a loving home or being gay that want to come into somewhere that they are welcomed and that are not, they're feeling welcome and they can receive the services they need without feeling bashed or any type of way, that they're just welcome with open arms.
Well, here's a leading question. Do you see people's attitude change when they find this program?
Well, this Sunday actually we just finished having Thanksgiving dinner and they was having karaoke. So if you was there, you would have felt very welcome because everybody was actually having a great time.
Not if they heard me sing, they wouldn't.
You wouldn't matter because there was people that was actually very, very, not really good at singing, but they still really didn't care because they actually had a very good time.
I've been to one of your pre-Thanksgiving dinners and they are wonderful, but one of the things that also happens in addition to just feeding people food, you do a lot of services with them right there in the context of the meal.
We have people that teach it, like we have tutors. Well, when I first started off going back to high school, I wasn't very good in some of my classes, which I was failing, and I needed tutors in math, in social studies, and in English, helping me with certain things and helping you with resumes. So those are some of the services they received me, and it actually made my grades go very higher.
I believe that.
I think one of the services or one of the programs we do that Destiny and I were just talking about on our way here, that Destiny participated in, is we send a bunch of our young people upstate for Queer Spirit Camp. So it's a 1 week. It's a 1 week gay summer camp, and I know Destiny was saying that it really was a transformational experience for a lot of the young people.
Well, Destiny, how has it transformed you? I mean, does it make you want to go into a particular field of study or work? Or?
Well, my study and my work, I want to go into art education, and that's the field I want to go into, but knowing that working with New Alternatives, it opened my eyes to different things, and knowing that different things that happen, well, not knowing that just in my area perspective, that me knowing that I came from a hard background of a family, I would think that that would be the only thing that would be on my mind. Well, there's other people out there that have been in harder situations, and it opened my eyes to knowing that I'm not the only one out there being hard. So knowing that that happened to me, it made me want to actually help people more, and it made me want to have different options and go into different fields. So it made me want to go have different internships and different fields and study into different things.
Talk about this whole problem of LGBT homelessness around the country and what youth. I mean, obviously you're dealing with the fact that people have been thrown out and they need services, and that's But what would help turn that around? What's your sense of that based on the young people that you deal with and interact with?
Well, I think one of the things that needs to happen is that we're seeing young people coming out earlier and earlier, and it's one thing to come out to a not necessarily supportive family when you're already in college or you're already away from the home and you're somewhat independent. But to come out into a family that's not supportive at 13 or 14 puts you at a real risk, both for physical violence and emotional abuse. So we need to see, families, we need to see the attitude starting to change to be more supportive and welcoming to gay youth. We need to see more support in the middle schools, because high schools have started having, gay-straight alliances and all these anti-bullying campaigns and stuff. But the middle schools aren't quite there yet in terms of being able to deal with LGBT youth.
We need curricular changes from the very beginning, and guidance counselors and everything, a whole systemic change. Well, Destiny, you're extremely impressive. I see you running for office any day.
Well, thank you very much. I don't see myself in office. I see myself actually helping a lot of people. I'd rather stay in a small community than work in a large community.
You're absolutely right, and
you get more things done in a small community than a
so
larger
true.
I feel the same way.
Well, thank you both for coming in, and at this time of Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah and all the holidays, we thought it was particularly important to let people meet you and think about what's going on and how they might be able to help.
Well, I also think that the world should know that on Thursday, if you have nowhere to go for Thanksgiving, you can always come to New Alternatives, and they're actually going to a nice restaurant on Thursday. So.
Okay.
We may be a little late for that, but I suspect you'll be doing something for Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, too.
Including the Secret Santa program.
Oh,
or the Gay Santa program.
Yes.
Santa program.
Not the Secret Santa.
Right.
Yes, we've told you about that in previous years, and that's something you really should pay attention to, the New Alternatives Gay Santa program.
People are welcome to sign up to be a Santa for a homeless youth. We'll send you a letter detailing the young person's request. They're capped at $100 or less, so don't feel afraid that they're going to ask you for a new house.
What's wrong with that? Some of them can afford it.
And we, of course, on Public Access are not making any specific requests,
No.
but if you want information about about this program and how you can help or how to get involved or how to tell your friends about it, go to newalternativesnyc.org. That's the website that... And if you missed that, sign up with Andy on andyhum@aol.com, and I suddenly blanked on that, and we'll give you all the information there. Best of luck, Destiny.
Thank you.
We will,
And Kate.
And Kate, definitely, but good luck with your college career and your arts education ambition.
It was nice to meet you, wonderful people.
It was nice to meet you, wonderful person.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be right back with the news. Wow, impressive.
Very impressive.
Yes, so just once more, because we don't want you to forget this, if you want to get more information about Kate's program and Destiny, go to newalternatives.org.
No, it's New Alternatives NYC.
You're so right.
.org. New Alternatives NYC.
I wish I could claim I screwed it up so you could correct me, but newalternativesnyc.org.
All right.
One other note before we launch into the news, we want to remind you that Free Speech TV, for those of you watching us through their network, is going to be in the midst of their pledge drive for the next few weeks and airing us just on Saturday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, correct for your own time.
And whenever
zone.
you miss the show, it's always available online at blip.tv, at YouTube, through an audio podcast as well.
On iTunes.
You can check out our website. You don't have to miss us.
Yes.
All right.
All right, so let's get on with the news.
Well, they had a big briefing about how did we win these marriage referenda this year? What went different? How did we overcome the princess ads? You know, they run ads saying, "Mommy, can I grow up and," the little girl says, "Can I grow up and marry a princess and be a princess?" and all this kind of stuff. And this is what has killed us the last couple of times because we didn't answer them properly. So in this briefing, it's based on a lot of research by a group called The Third Way, which is actually a centrist Democratic think tank. And they said among the key changes in messaging that they did was from a talk about rights, our right to all these things, to a focus on committed relationships. Mm-hmm. Who would have thunk it? Actually talk about a decision to address values directly as being learned at home. Mm-hmm. That people are they showed parents transmitting this to their children and things like this, as opposed to being worried that they're going to go to school and learn about what gay people do in bed. Which
right.
Is
in fact, giving a sort of subtle individual rights message of don't worry about whatever is taught at school. The basic values come from the home. So no matter which side you're on, in fact, you're in charge.
And it did vary by the state that it was in. Mm-hmm. And, in Maryland, they focused on faith communities and the African American community very successfully. It didn't hurt that President Obama came out for same-sex marriage.
And Governor O'Malley of Maryland gave specific credit to a couple of African American pastors.
And the Democratic Party supported same-sex marriage. That helped. Prominent Republicans came out for it. Straight sports stars like our friend
Chris
Cluey in Minnesota.
But also using gay people in ads helped.
Yes.
And that's something we've been begging for years in a humanizing way that made it more real for people.
And they have this message that commitment trumps rights. Leading with commitment will show the middle that gay people want to join the institution of marriage, not change it. Not that it doesn't still need some changing. I'm saying that here right now, and if anybody wants to quote me, fine. But, we need, marriage has evolved quite a bit towards a much more equal institution.
Yes, but what all this was needed for was to overcome the virulent campaigns still being run by the National Organization for Marriage, the Catholic Church, the Mormon Church, the Knights of Columbus.
Well, they did emphasize, and that's another thing that they said they emphasized, was religious liberty, that no church is going to be $2 million to do anything they don't want to do.
Well, they, in fact,
they wrote it into the law.
Yes. Nonetheless, the Catholic Church spent $2 million fighting marriage in those 4 states where we won.
With all those homeless people that need help?
Yes, exactly. And what they did was collect money from dioceses around the country. There's this huge long list of dioceses around the country that kicked in. You can see all the details of what Catholic diocese contributed what to these fights in Washington, Maryland, Maine, and Minnesota. HRC has gotten the reports and put that online. You can go to hrc.org/Catholic report.
Where is the rebellion in the pews?
Well, that's exactly what we'd like to see. But first you start with the information, and then you rise up in high dudgeon.
You think you're helping the poor, and look what happens.
Well, it's really disgusting that that's what they're focused on when there is such, could they kick in a little to newalternativesnyc.org?
Right.
No, they can go out and fight people's desire to be married.
No. And the story of the week, as far as I'm concerned, is what happened to a teenager in Minnesota. He's on the verge of being confirmed. He's
in his Catholic church.
He's 17-year-old. His name is Lennon. Lennon.
Why is he being confirmed at 17?
Well,
in the Episcopal Church, they confirm you at 12.
I was confirmed at 12. I became a soldier of Christ. I got a little slap on the cheek from the bishop.
I quit just before confirmation.
And I took it, since I didn't have a middle name, I took well, you get a confirmation name anyway, and I took Jeremiah. Anyway, that's why I'm Andrew Jeremiah Hum. Anyway, that was the old way.
Yeah.
12. It was sort of like a bar mitzvah.
Yes.
At your coming of age.
Yes.
But actually, it was Fulton Sheen, one of the gay bishops of the Catholic Church, very famous TV priest, who said, I'm going to move it to 18. I want you to really be an adult before you make this commitment lifelong to Christianity. So anyway, this kid named Lennon Cihak, I hope I'm saying his name right, C-I-H-A-K, rather, C-I-H-A-K. He's about to be confirmed, and the church secretary has been monitoring Facebook, and she notices his...
The world is going to hell.
She notices his picture where he's taken a sign that says to vote for this amendment against same-sex marriage in Minnesota.
Because he's in Minnesota, yes.
And he crosses it out and says, no, don't vote for that. You know,
vote no.
And he gets a lot of likes and everything. And the priest in his parish says...
Calls up his parents, didn't he?
Well, he says that he cannot be confirmed in the Catholic Church as a result because he doesn't accept church teaching. Now, the priest is blaming the parents for making a big deal about this. And anyway, the priest also confirmed that some other people have been thrown out of this as well. But the end of the story is the best because the kid tweeted on this last Friday, no matter how much negative feedback I get, I will always support the LGBT community. Support what you believe in, he says. Good for him.
P.S. His entire family has been denied communion.
Thank goodness.
Just for living with him.
Don't you know that a majority, if this priest has the courage of his convictions, ask everybody in the church to stand up who agrees with this kid and see what happens. You'll find out what kind of support you have, because most rank and file Catholics support same-sex marriage.
Well, I yearn for the day of revolution in the church, and I believe it will happen in our lifetime.
Well, not at Catholic University of San Diego. You saw this story?
Yes.
Well, they were going to have a speaker, Tina Beatty, who's a Catholic theologian from Britain, and she was supposed to be a speaker and get some sort of honor or something like that at the University of San Diego, which is a Catholic university of San Diego. And they canceled, the president of the school canceled everything. And said, well, it's not that she actually has this view about same-sex marriage, that she supports it. It's that they were going to give her an honor, and we can't allow that again. So she got a vote of no confidence from her faculty, overwhelmingly.
We'll see what happens to her. Meanwhile, in addition to the report on the specific donations of the Catholic Church, the National Organization for Marriage, which got some of that money, filed its report for 2011, not this year yet, but they raised $6 million in 2011. The previous year, in 2010, they had raised $9 million. But the interesting thing about the $6 million is that most of it, or
75%,
came from two donations of $2.4 million each. Now, I looked at the tax return, and they are forced to list every donation, but with no identifying information about the donor.
And what are the odds that the two donors would pick the figure 2.4 million?
No, they're not exactly the same. One is like 2.399 and the other is 2.4. But it's being reported as two donors, and my question is...
It's two donations.
Exactly. So how do we know it isn't just one donor? We don't know anything because they don't tell us.
And the interesting thing is that this is a sharp drop, but it's also notable because the National Organization for Marriage had been growing every year since 2007 when they were started. And of course now, what are they going to do? There will be other fights.
They will call up Sheldon Adelson and they will say, Sheldon.
This is the guy who funded the Newt Gingrich campaign and the anti-Obama PAC.
Newt didn't work. Mitt didn't work. You transferred to Mitt. Now you can give us your money. They did pay $375,000 to Frank Schubert to construct those anti-LGBT ads.
How much?
$375,000 last year, 2011.
Brian, Brian Brown is the head of the organization. Brian, all that money, and you got ads that were used in last year. Same actors, nothing new.
Well, that was 2011's payment. They probably paid him 6 times as
Same
much
ads,
this year.
you're getting rolled. Anybody who's giving the money is getting rolled, and that includes the Catholic Church.
Well, anyone who's giving money to the Republicans is getting rolled. December 9th will be the Seattle, Washington City Hall extravaganza of marriage ceremonies. Licenses can be issued December 6th, but there's a 3-day waiting period. So City Hall is going to be opened up in its rotunda. You remember all the shots of San Francisco City Hall marriages.
Yes, those rogue marriages that drove Barney Frank crazy. I actually thought that they were good, even though,
well, they put pressure on.
They put a face on same-sex marriage in a way that
we're
it never
still seeing those faces because that's the footage they have to use. Anyway, they're going to do it in Seattle December 9th. There are judges who have volunteered to perform ceremonies for free. They're not going to make it a big free-for-all. They're going to do it. They're going to have little
in a dignified
individual
fashion.
Chapels, or whatever. Not chapels. It's not religious.
Well,
I
actually,
take that back.
well, that's true. I don't know what they call them.
Little hutches of some kind.
Whatever.
Right.
We buried the headline. We didn't even do this story last week, but the New York Times certainly paid attention to it. Gays won Obama the election. They took out this data. They bought it. The Times did a big story about this. They said the straight vote went 49-49. But with the gay vote, that's how Obama won. Well, what about all those Latinos?
The Latino vote went 70-30.
Yeah. What about the women?
Black vote
what about
98-2?
Mothers won it for Obama.
Well, here's the other thing that drives me nuts. The stories that say, if only the Republicans were nice to gay people, they could have won the election because the votes would have switched. Yeah, you know what would have switched? 50% of the Republicans would have stayed home if the Republican Party had come out for LGBT rights.
That was that analysis by Jonathan Capehart of the
and
Washington
others.
Post.
He wasn't the only one.
It's ridiculous. Well, I mean, there is that data that came out before the election that said gays, if they were a little nicer, like another 25% would have gone to Romney, but. Romney.
Shame on us.
Since we taped last week, Romney is now saying that Obama gave all these gifts to constituents, and that's how he won. What about all those gifts that the Republican Party gives to rich people? Where do you think you get all those Sheldon Adelson $10 million donations? Gifts. They gave away the whole country. Republicans gave away the whole country, and they couldn't win the election. Anyway.
Other election notes. In Oregon, the House Democrats, who are in charge now of the House of Representatives in Oregon, have elected an out lesbian as the Speaker of the House, Tina Kotek.
Yes.
I don't know whether we can put up her picture. Maybe we'll do that in post-production. Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Tina, the new Speaker of the House of Representatives in Oregon, joining John Perez, Speaker of the Assembly in California,
Gordon
guy in
Gordon
Fox in Rhode Island, the guy in Colorado,
Washington State,
and the guy in Washington State.
We are taking over.
Well, we're getting there.
And we got
other election news. Out lesbian Mary Rowland has been sworn in as a U.S. magistrate judge in the Northern District of Illinois. She has been a federal defender in big civil cases. She went up against the Chicago Fire Department on behalf of black firemen and juveniles who were being strip searched. And now she is a big federal judge in Illinois. Good for her.
We've been telling you in New York State, even though the Democrats won a narrow majority in the state Senate, that there are a lot of rogue Democrats in New York. It's a crazy state. We've been telling you this. It's not a liberal state, and they're thinking of caucusing with the Republicans. Now, there are rallies going on around the state to try to stop this, but it's in the process of happening, and it may endanger the agenda, which is the Gender Identity and Expression Non-Discrimination Act, which is supposed to be the top of the gay agenda, LGBT agenda going in.
Yeah. Well, what about the federal court that's going to overturn the religious services in New York City schools? They're getting optimistic about that the bad decision is going to be overturned once again.
The
They're
oral arguments were this week.
Yes, and it looks like the judges who have voted against that in the past are going to do so again and overturn it.
This has been going on for about 10 years in New York because of one federal judge who said, "Oh, of course you can go in," and then that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was over, and the Supreme Court said wouldn't hear the case. They went back to the same judge with different arguments, and she said, "Oh, yes, you can be in the schools, but watch out for these people, because here's what's happening. You're allowed to have prayer in schools in the sense of a prayer group that meets after school,
right?
But we're distinguishing it and saying it's worship, regular worship services, and they're saying, oh, you can't make that distinction.
Plus, which it's not just a discrete event; they tend to permeate the entire school,
right? Right. It's a horrible violation of church and state, and it's something that we do want to say. I have a clipping on that. Yeah, I'm actually was very pleased to see the in Santa Monica. They have a lot of religious Christmas displays up in the city's center there in the park, and an atheist group said, well, if they can do it, we can do it. And people didn't like the atheist display, so they said, well, look, we're just going to put it into a lottery. We can't have this many. And the atheist group won most of the spots. So people didn't like that. So now they're saying no unattended displays whatsoever. But that's the point.
Yes.
They're not. The other side keeps saying, we're for religious liberty. No, this is the problem. You want religious preference. You want religious privilege.
Yes,
you don't
privilege.
You don't want just liberty.
Well, one of the people arguing for religious privilege is a lawyer named Lisa Byron, who works with the Alliance Defense Fund, which now has a new name,
Really?
Alliance Defending Freedom or something, in Manchester, New Hampshire. Well, she has just been arrested. This is a right-wing lawyer for driving a teenage girl to Canada and forcing her to participate in a porn film. Lisa Byron, Alliance Defense Fund.
I can top that.
Go.
Let's go to the International House of Prayer in Kansas City, where Tyler Denton, who was a self-professed ex-gay, he's a leader of this International House of Prayer Church, part of the charismatic movement, headed by the anti-gay pastor Lou Engle. Well, he is suspected of ordering one of his group members to murder his wife and make it look like a suicide. But not only that, he had the men in the group raping her on a regular basis before they killed her because they were worried she was going to talk, and making some of the men have sex with him as part of a ritual. This is, frequently, it's a screwed up system, folks.
I can make a lot of comments, but it's
get away from it. It's just horrible.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's move on.
Good. I'm glad you can't top that.
I don't want to.
Although General Petraeus could be arrested for adultery, it's still against the law in the military.
In Grand Island, Nebraska, here's some good news from the middle of the country. The city council has overridden the mayor's veto of a non-discrimination bill for sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. The bill had originally passed 5-4, maybe 6-4. The mayor vetoed it. It needed 7 votes to override the veto. 2 of the people who had voted against it originally were so offended by the mayor's veto message that they switched their votes and voted for the bill, and it ended up passing 8-2.
Who says people can't change?
or don't have values.
We are invested in people changing.
Yeah, well, speaking of someone monitoring change, Nate Silver, the great hero of the election.
Wait a minute. All he did was science. This is the guy.
Exactly. But he did it better than anyone else.
It's called the 538 website at the New York Times. In the last election, 2008, he predicted correctly 49 out of 50 states. This time it was 50 out of 50 states that he figured out. And the right wing was always furious at him and always shouting things at him and making comments about his sexuality as well.
Well, they were describing him as effeminate. So he gives an interview to The Observer, a British newspaper, and is referred to and talks about himself as gay. And there was some discussion online about, oh, he just came out. No, he didn't. He's been out. No, is he out?
He was in Out magazine. He was one of the Out 100 a couple of years ago.
Right. 34 years old, out gay, and we did learn a couple of things about him in this interview. That he
baseball was his big passion.
Well, he's the one who did.
That's what got him into statistics.
Yeah, he's the one who worked with the Oakland A's, I guess, and did the analysis that you.
He's the one. Okay.
Yeah, that you figure out how people are actually going to perform and their worth to the team. Before that, he made a lot of money playing poker online.
Well, that's a good work for a statistician.
Set himself up.
I have a nephew who made a living that way for a while.
And speaking of sports, the Seattle Sounders, a Major League Soccer team, has player Mark Birch, who called an opponent a faggot.
That's not nice.
He's been fined. He's been sent to mandatory sensitivity training and got a 3-game suspension.
Good thing Billy Martin's not around. He'd be getting a lot more fines. That was the manager of the Yankees, and he had a very foul mouth.
Looking forward, there is some hope that there might be this immigration reform bill. Chuck Schumer and Lindsey Graham are supposedly working on it together, and that it might be LGBT inclusive. You think you're looking skeptical?
Barney Frank said, if you think anything is getting through the House, he's leaving, not because he's leaving, but just because the Republican House, forget about it.
Well, but if they're working on, if they're
forget about it.
Bipartisan.
Forget about it.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I would love to be shocked about this. And look, if the party does come to its senses and says, what the hell's it going to cost us to do something like this? It'll soften things up a little bit. You know, they'd be very, very smart to do it. You know,
I agree.
Very, very smart to do it.
All right. More in the realm of possibility, evidently. There's a lesbian member of the House of Delegates in Maryland, Heather Miser, who may run for governor in 2014.
Right.
We'll keep an eye on her. On the other hand, Scott Lively,
yes,
the author of the Uganda Kill the Gays bill, and
will make a very interesting race for governor of Massachusetts, apparently.
Can't wait to see that.
Well, you know, Mitt Romney was governor of Massachusetts. Good news from Syracuse, New York. It became the 10th municipality in New York State to adopt a transgender non-discrimination ordinance. That means that 60% of New York are covered by it.
Okay.
Yep.
And we mourn the death of Howard Wallace at 76. He was the co-founder of the great organization Pride at Work, which is the gay labor union organization. He was involved with Service Employees International, a very anti-war, worked with Harvey Milk on the Coors boycott years ago.
And opposing the Briggs Initiative, which they defeated. But, you know, the Coors boycott was a very seminal moment. It's kind of what catapulted Harvey Milk into office, because he worked with labor, and that made him a more, because he'd lost a bunch of races, and then he made this alliance with labor over the Coors boycott, and that was all through Howard Wallace, who was a great, great leader.
And worked in coalition with the AFL-CIO. Labor has been an enormous supporter of LGBT causes for years now, and largely because of the work of Howard and people like him.
That's great. And I see that the Human Rights Campaign is taking on the issue of the fiscal cliff and saying that this is an issue very important to LGBT people because of how sequestration or the automatic cuts would fall heavily upon HIV/AIDS programs, services for people with AIDS, investigation of hate crimes, everything. So they are telling Congress, let's work together to avoid that.
I'm telling LGBT people to pay attention to this and talk to their members of Congress. Not looking good for Kevin Clash, who created Elmo. He's now got a second accuser. The first accuser is saying, I want to recant my recantation.
So he's resigned from Sesame Street,
He has.
calling the allegations a distraction.
Yeah, so we don't know the details, we don't know the truth, but there are a couple, and you know, there are some people who say, oh, this is just guys trying to make money, and others who say, no, this is bad behavior.
Well,
We'll see.
yes, the most recent accuser is saying, I just realized that I was traumatized by this in 2012. And you know, look, sometimes I guess you do read things that happen, and it does bring back stuff. Who knows? We don't know.
We thank the White House for recognizing and noting Transgender Day of Remembrance this week on November 20th. You know, far too many people killed and discriminated against. And there was a ceremony at the White House to acknowledge that.
Well, international news,
Yes.
as long as we're talking about violence. In San Juan, Puerto Rico, a gay man known just as, they're just saying Jeff, his body was discovered October 24th. They haven't released a cause of death, but according to advocates, LGBTQ advocates down there, the area where he was killed is known for violence against LGBT people in San Juan.
A lot of talk online this week about the proposed anti-gay bills in Uganda and Nigeria and the best way to deal with those. We've followed these along as possibilities. We're not sure whether they're really going to pass or whether this is a lot of talk by politicians in those countries, but there have been pleas from people in those countries, gay activists in those countries, not to do a lot of demonstrations in this country, for instance, for fear of starting backlashes and defensive work by people in those countries.
What they are asking for is support for the organizations that do this work indigenously in the countries. If you really want to help them do their work.
And ask your government to diplomatically reach out on these bills rather than foment a lot of
I mean, one of the reasons that these bills are brought up is to goad the rest of the world. Go ahead. Tell us, about your values, and they just
threaten to cut off our aid.
Because then they act like they're standing up to the perverted West.
But it's always a tough call because people in those countries necessarily are concerned about how they're going to be treated in the midst of this, and you never know what really will make a difference.
Right.
But that's a continuing question.
As we are sitting here, the UN is going to be voting on the resolution on extrajudicial executions, and we're fighting hard to kill. EagleHerc, the International Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission, is urging people to keep references to sexual orientation in there.
In France, we are awaiting the introduction of the proposed legalization of same-sex marriage. They have a partnership benefits law, but the new socialist president wants to kick it up to full marriage equality.
Hollande.
So at first that seemed like it was going to be an easy deal, but now the Catholics are rising, the Catholic Church is rising up.
Well, they really are. It's very funny because, nobody goes to church, really, right? But all of a sudden, they want to do something nice for us, and they discover that they're Catholics. Well, they say they turned out 200,000 people in Paris. Police estimated 70,000.
In conjunction with some neo-Nazis.
It's still a big crowd.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Well, I listen.
There were counter protests. There was a big kiss-in in front of the city hall in Paris.
There were topless nuns
well,
walking
they were
down the
feminists
street.
dressed as topless nuns.
Yes, I didn't think they were really sisters.
No.
Anyway, the National Assembly in France is going to start examining the proposal in January. A vote is not expected to mid-2013. It sounds like you're dragging this out quite a bit. Why don't you get it over with if you're going to do it?
Do it fast. Good
Majority of the people in France support it.
Good news from Chile, where a gay man has been elected to the municipal council in Providencia, Santiago, Chile.
Jaime Parada Hoyle, who is a spokesperson for the Movement for Homosexual Integration and Liberation. So
And
a gay, an activist.
First out gay man elected to office in Chile. He beat a guy who was an intelligence agent for the Pinochet regime.
Horrible.
That must have been interesting. And he was part of the delegation of activists from South America who visited the U.S. a few months ago under the auspices of our State Department. So that's interesting.
And it's a very conservative area that he's representing, a wealthy and conservative area.
But he is not the first LGBT person elected. There are 2 trans people who hold similar municipal council offices, one just elected and one re-elected.
And they are making progress in Chile. The president signed a hate crimes and anti-discrimination bill.
In the wake of that horrible murder of the gay man there.
Of Zamudio.
Yeah.
Yes.
1 million people showed up for Pride in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Big celebration, but as someone noted, great, but 266 LGBT people were killed in Brazil last year.
Staying in Latin America, Uruguay, the Congress there is considering a same-sex marriage law. They already have a civil unions law, and they've also legalized abortion and plan to sell government-grown marijuana to any citizen who wants it. So this is making a move. The Catholic Church is opposed there.
I detect a theme. A transgender teenager, James Spencer, 16, in Toronto, Canada, was denied use of the men's room at his high school.
But in Cuba, Adela Hernandez, who's a biological male and has lived as a female since childhood and served in prison time for dangerousness, as the first known transgender person to hold public office in Cuba.
Terrific. All right, AIDS news. Well, World AIDS Day is coming up on December 1st. There are going to be demonstrations by activists in Washington to protest against things like the possible fiscal cliff that will defund a lot of AIDS programs. I'm working with Visual AIDS on a project right now. They're the ones who invented the Day Without Art, which is part of this World AIDS Day thing.
They cover up artworks in museums to mourn lost people with AIDS.
Well, Visual AIDS as an organization archives work by HIV-positive artists, living and dead, and they do a monthly online exhibition, a gallery of a few pictures where they have guest curators, and I'm going to guest curate the December one.
So where do we go?
Visualaids.org to see all the web galleries, and mine will be up in December. They are also sponsoring, starting this week, showings of the United in Anger ACT UP film, the Jim Hubbard, Sarah Schulman film. You've heard about How to Survive a Plague, which is the David France film. This is the other one, and that's going to be all over the country, various showings. So if you go to visualaids.org, you can find out where in your area the screenings of United in Anger are, and find out lots of things about World AIDS Day. There
is a new director of the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria, the Global Fund it's called, and his name is Mark Dibble. Dibble is how we say his name?
Yeah.
And he's getting praise from a number of AIDS organizations.
He has a somewhat mixed record. He worked for Bush on the president's emergency program, so there's some people that he would think he was too involved with things like the abstinence-only education or the rules against giving money to programs in Africa that supported prostitutes.
Alls I can tell you, as Mayor Bloomberg would say, is that Akria, GMHC, and SAGE are happy.
Yeah.
The Navy has changed its policy to allow HIV-positive sailors serve overseas and on large ships.
Yes.
Basically acknowledging that, they never threw people out because of HIV.
But they restricted their
Right.
service.
But that says that they understand the disease has changed.
The Navy is the first to now allow overseas service, and the other services may come along with that. Also, MTV for World AIDS Day on December 1st is airing a special called I'm Positive with HIV-positive teenagers.
And we're expecting a ruling about the horrible policies in Alabama and South Carolina, which essentially put people with HIV in separate quarters, isolation, all this other kind of stuff.
Inmates.
Inmates. And what did I say?
Nothing.
All right. Inmates. People.
All right.
Well, they're people too.
Yes, exactly. You want to tell us about Annie? Will the sun come out tomorrow?
I love the revival of Annie. I can't. I'm sure I only saw it like once before, but it all stayed with me, and it all came back. And
You sang along and danced.
Well,
to the
in my
aisle.
head, I did. I'm not one of those obnoxious people who sings out loud.
That's what
but
you
this
think.
is directed by James Lapine, who does all that work with Sondheim over the years. Anthony Warlow is Daddy Warbucks, terrific. Lila L-I-L-L-A Crawford is the little Annie, and she's great. It's and Sandy, of course, played by
Arf.
Sonny. Well, I saw a whole special about how they pick the dog. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, they get rescue dogs and they
Yeah.
train them.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful. So treat yourself. It's a wonderful show.
Nice to hear. The movie Wish Me Away, the documentary about the country singer Shelley Wright, who came out, is running now on Showtime. Well worth seeing. A quirky story of her, because this whole movie is sort of her struggle with the moment of coming out. And a lot of it is her filming herself in the bathroom mirror and stuff.
Yes, we saw it. It's a great movie.
Yeah, really, really interesting. So Wish Me Away on Showtime.
Really terrific. We saw a new play by, play or review, whatever you want to call it, called Emotional Creature by Eve Ensler, who did the Vagina monologues. And now we are old, and we talked to Destiny, our guest, earlier in the show, and she really liked Emotional Creature, but it was not for us.
I think it's more for her age group than ours.
It's fun. It's a funny show because it's a combination. When the group of young women who do this, and they start out talking like high school girls, and then they start doing younger women and things. And I mean, some of it seemed very superficial, and then it got very intense when you had like Africans who were being raped in their countries, this kind of stuff, which actually I thought was very compelling. But like, wow, how did we get here from high school problems and things like that? So it didn't work for me.
I like the Chinese girl talking about making Barbies in a factory, but I agree, it was not something I would recommend.
Certainly not for Thanksgiving.
But what we would recommend, as the credits roll, is that you check out newalternativesnyc.org to learn more about the program for LGBT homeless youth and how you might be able to help. And we hope you all, because you're seeing this after your Thanksgiving dinner probably, had a happy and delicious Thanksgiving with family, friends, or on your own. And we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.